Welcome to Codex, a history of video games. My name is Tyler Osby.
And I'm Mike Coletta.
And this week, we're talking about a game series that I'm sure is near and dear to many of our hearts. A game series that spans many different consoles. It's a sports game. Mike, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about NBA Jam, the old
Who's
razzle
on fire?
dazzle. Yeah, boom shakalaka. Oh man, I'm so excited to talk about this game that's essentially my childhood. Maybe your childhood too. Did you play this game a lot?
So I didn't play NBA Jam very much at all as a child, but what I did play was a game called, on my Super Nintendo, a game called College Slam, which is exactly like NBA Jam. I think it's made by the same people. It's like the same engine or whatever. It's like all the same things. It's just all the teams, instead of being NBA teams, they were college teams.
Oh yeah, you got that sounds right up the alley. You got to check to see if Midway made that. That's how you'll know. But,
yeah, it was Acclaim, I think.
Oh, okay. They did make it. They are the same, probably. So, actually, I'm going to get into that in a bit. But essentially, the story with NBA Jam is it's the first arcade game to bring in over $1 billion in quarters.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal. And NBA Jam was released by Midway in 1993. But the idea of a two-on-two basketball game actually came from a previous Midway game in 1989 called Arch Rivals. Have you ever heard of Arch Rivals? Because I have.
I have never heard of Arch Rivals.
So just like NBA Jam, Arch Rivals was 2-on-2 basketball played in four-minute quarters. But unlike NBA Jam, you were encouraged to punch people.
Oh, okay.
In NBA Jam, you can push and stuff and not get a foul. But in Arch Rivals, you could punch them, and you had to punch them so you could steal the ball. That's pretty much the big thing. The referee would only call a shot clock violation, and there were also like on the court hazards, like soda cans and candy wrappers. And if you hit those, you'd like fall down, and yeah, you'd lose too. Players could also fall over the referee, just like on the floor. So the referee was like a hazard in the game, and you could also do this move called a flying leap, where you essentially like tackle the other team player by doing a select series of buttons. And if you succeed, you tackle them and take the ball. And if you fail, you just fly across the map, which is funny. You could also, and this is very important to note, shatter the backboard. So this is where shattering the backboard in NBA Jam comes from.
Okay.
Arch Rivals. The teams were all fictional, and the 8 unique characters in the game had names like Blade, Hammer, Mohawk, Moose, and Lewis. Those are the big names.
And Lewis.
So this is actually where Midway started with 2-on-2 basketball. I say Sims in the notes, but it's by no means a simulation. While released first in arcades in 1989, there were also some ports of this game. NES had one, Master Drive, Genesis, Game Gear, and you can actually find Arch Rivals in modern Midway collections. I know I saw it on PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and PC. I don't know if there's anything newer than that, but you can if you find a Midway collection, there's a chance that Arch Rivals is on it. So now, though, NBA Jam. I'm getting a lot of information, by the way, about NBA Jam from an article I found called The Rise, Fall, and Return of NBA Jam. I highly recommend it. If you just Google that, it'll pop up. It's like a 6-page article. It's pretty interesting. If you're interested in NBA Jam, check it out. I'll just say that. But NBA Jam's development actually comes out of one of Midway's failures as a company. They had a game called Total Carnage. And it did not actually meet Midway's minimum sales figures to break even. And this is Total Carnage programmer Sean Liptak said Midway had a minimum. I think they had to sell 2,000 on average to break even on a product, and we didn't even hit that number. And
for
selling 2,000
Total
copies,
Carnage?
Yeah, is pretty low.
Oh, wow. I had a friend, a kid that lived up the street, had a copy of Total Carnage. He loved playing that game.
You know what? That means that he was in the minority, apparently. Unless he bought it later on. I think this is like release numbers. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay. Maybe, yeah.
It didn't do very well. And then in 1992, the Total Carnage programmer / designer Mark Turmel decided he needed to make something with more of a broad appeal. And he thought instantly of basketballs and the Arch Rivals game, because that was kind of a sleeper hit for Midway. And he's like, we haven't really visited this again. So he then decided to make his own 2-on-2 basketball game that borrowed the digital characters, like digitized character style graphics seen in games like Narc and Mortal Kombat, where they take a low resolution photo and that's the animation. So like it looks very 90s, like a lot of games at the time. And Turmel wasn't even thinking about licensing when he made the game, but it was actually Neil Nicastro, the president of Midway, that said something along the lines of like, you can't make an NBA game and not use the NBA. Like we need to get licenses for these. Like no one's going to buy it if it's just not associated with the NBA. So
it's true. Those football games that came out after EA had the sole license to Madden, like they couldn't use the NFL license. Like those games, no one bought them.
Yep, no one bought them at all. It's kind of a bummer, actually. And so what happened with the NBA though is they were like super apprehensive, I guess, to do any video games. And this is kind of funny. The reason the NBA was not really into licensing for arcade games specifically is there were a lot of dodgy arcades in Times Square near the NBA headquarters that like were like scenes of like drugs and violence, and they were like, why would we make a game and put it in one of those spots? It's terrible for our brand. And like Midway had to like convince them like, no, video games are growing, there's like consoles and stuff, it's gonna be a bigger thing. They had to like convince them to use the license to the NBA because the NBA's headquarters in Times Square were around some very dodgy arcades at the time. But the NBA eventually got on board as long as Midway agreed to pay them $100 for every arcade cabinet sold. That was their royalty deal, which they sell an arcade cabinet for $400. So making 1/4 of the profit.
That's 25%. Dang.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. And it'll come back to bite them in a second. So a funny thing about those initial Midway pitches to the NBA, by the way, they featured like different camera angles, coach tips, instant replays, even like a first person view. Like your guy would jump into a first person view if he got on a fast break. And all of that stuff was cut from the final versions of the game.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they just pitched it and they're like, nope, we're not going to do that. The graphics of player movement were actually done by real life amateur basketball players because they used this digital technology. They could take a bunch of photos, and turn it into animation. So, and a guy, one of those players, it's Stephen Howard, I think is how it's pronounced. It might be Stephen or Steven. So apologies. They actually went on to play for the Utah Jazz.
Oh, wow. So he became a pro basketball player.
Yeah, and he got into the game NBA Jam. But a lot of these players that were amateur basketball players are secret characters in the initial NBA Jam.
Oh, like their actual names? You can like unlock them and play
you
as
can
them.
unlock them with some cool button combinations,
Oh, man. There's
school.
some good unlockable characters in those NBA games. I hope we get into that.
There's so many. I'm going to get into it, and there's a lot of them. I'm going to touch on it, but it doesn't even scratch the surface of the secret characters in NBA Jam that I didn't even realize it. NBA Jam, I think, is pretty cool too because it wasn't just Turmel creating the game. Like a lot of the stuff that we love about NBA Jam and like a lot of modern sports games, like other people on the team thought of. Like this is a quote from Turmel. He says, quote, "My big ideas in NBA Jam were to do the spectacular dunks and 2-on-2 basketball. But the whole game was very much a team effort. For instance, someone else came up with the idea of attributes giving players different abilities, which is a huge part of sports games.
You got to pick the right players because if you can only put two out there on the court, you got to make sure you pick the right two."
Yeah, exactly. So it's like it's pretty nuts that he it wasn't just a solo effort, and it was all kind of people came together and helped, which is cool. So here are some facts about the players in the first NBA Jam. And this section has the fact of the episode that I'm super excited about. Okay, so the original arcade version of NBA Jam had rosters from the 92-93 NBA season. And the console version had different rosters from the 93-94 NBA season. Myself, as a child, always wondered, why is Michael Jordan not in this game? Did you ever wonder that?
I wonder that today. I was just thinking that in my head. I was like, I wonder if Michael Jordan was in that game.
He was never in NBA Jam. Well, not never. I'm going to talk about that in a second. That's the fact of the episode. But he owned the rights to himself. Most NBA players at this time did not own their likeness. It was owned by the NBA. Michael Jordan was one of the few players to actually own his likeness and his brand. So there would have
been a whole separate licensing deal to get him in there.
Like if you wanted to put Michael Jordan in the game, you would have had to like pay him on top of, you probably had to pay him an extra $100 each cabinet, honestly.
Yeah, probably. But it probably would have been worth it, to be honest.
Oh, yeah, totally. Shaquille O'Neal is actually in the arcade version as a member of the Orlando Magic. But in the home versions, he is not in the game anymore because that's when he got his likeness deal, like MJ did. So it's kind of funny to see players drop in and out. Now, this is the fact of the episode. This is from an interview with Turmel in an ESPN magazine article that was called Gamer Blog. I couldn't find any other gamer blogs. This is like a really cool thing that ESPN used to do, though. They talk about sports games, apparently. I had no idea. So, quote, the most interesting one was the team of Gary Payton and Michael Jordan. Payton didn't make the cut to be in the game, and of course, Jordan pulled himself out of the licensing with the NBA. So we had to pull him out of the game. But one day, I got a phone call, that's Termel, from a distributor on the West Coast who told me that Gary Payton was willing to pay whatever it cost to get him into the game. So we
he was willing to pay them.
Yeah, so we told him what to do in terms of taking photographs. So he sent in photographs of himself and Jordan saying, we want to be in the game, hook us up. So we actually did a special version of the game and gave both players all-star superstar stats. There are only a handful of these arcade machines, but Jordan and Payton did end up being in one version of NBA Jam. End quote.
Wow.
And they got their own personalized versions of NBA Jam, is what that says to me. We're
That's
just
crazy.
going to pay for it. And so they're on a team together. That's the crazy thing. Gary Payton paid for the Sonics, Jordan played for the Bulls, but they're on their own team together in this version, which I think is so amazing.
What's the team called?
I don't know. I want to know what it's called. It's probably like All Stars or Superstars.
Yeah.
I want to see if there's someone like that owns a version of this arcade cabinet. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. There's got to be. But more player facts. During development, Godzilla and Bart Simpson were planned to be secret unlockable characters, but they were ultimately scrapped. I would have loved that. There are also so many secret characters in NBA Jam and NBA Jam Tournament Edition, which Tyler and I have talked about. But here are a few. There is U.S. President Bill Clinton, Warren Moon, the NFL quarterback, George Clinton, the funk musician, Al Gore, the Beastie Boys, Carol Blazowski, who was a WNBA player that was inducted into the inaugural class of the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame in 1999. She might be the first female basketball player in video games.
Oh, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah. Benny the Bull. It was in there, the Bulls mascot. There's a lot of other mascots. I think Hunter the Hornet, the Hornets mascot there. And also Will Smith, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, is in the game as well. Also, there are like 5 developers in there, including Termel, and some of them have like fake names and some of them don't, which I think is really funny. But yeah, the hard part about tracking secret characters in NBA Jam is it was different by console. So some of them are in the Super Nintendo version, and then some of them are in the arcade version, some of them in the Genesis version. Like, they're not all the same. They're very different based on what console you bought it on. So it was really hard to keep track. So I just named a couple of them. Now,
I think Hillary Clinton is in there too at some point. Like, there's somebody who is like a really big fan of that administration, I guess.
She is. Sarah Palin is in the 2010 one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. But there's also a hidden game within the arcade version of NBA Jam. It's a tank game created by Mark Termel. Just before the court is shown at the start of the game, joysticks 1 and 2 must be moved down and all 6 of their buttons held down. And then the tank game appears and the player can drive a tank and shoot enemy tanks for 1 minute before the game starts.
Wow, that sounds so great.
All right, now that I've talked about this for a while, I'll answer questions to anyone here. What is NBA Jam? Well, NBA Jam is a top-down 2-on-2 basketball game where the players jump higher than you ever could jump. They do like crazy, awesome flip dunks, and they sometimes sparkle. And if you score 3 times in a row, your player is, quote, on fire. And they actually light on fire.
The hoop catches on fire.
Yep, that's unlimited great. Turbo, increased shooting accuracy. You want to be on fire. The best part, actually, to me, was when you'd make 2 in a row and the announcer would be like, heating up. You know, you're like, I'm going to get there, which is good. But the game announcer sells that game, I think.
Oh,
he's
absolutely.
He's on fire. Boom shakalaka is another big thing they would say. I just love it. Much like arch rivals, but also there are no fouls, free throws, or violations except goaltending and a 24-second shot clock. Those are the 2 things you can get in trouble for in NBA Jam. This means the player is able to freely shove or elbow anyone out of the way. I think there's a button you can actually push where your guy just throws elbows back and forth, if I remember correctly. Like, he just like rotates his waist and swings elbows at everyone. The teams are made up of 2 different players on each team. I remember John Stockton and Karl Malone of the Utah Jazz being an amazing combo, like a super clutch version. I think I had Tournament Edition for Genesis because I had the ability to change players in the teams, and I don't think the original NBA Jam had that. Just to throw it out there. That's my thoughts. But now, This is where things get interesting with the NBA Jam story and the drama ensues. So Midway did
drama.
not. Oh, here comes the hot goss train coming at you. Midway did not develop or distribute the original NBA Jam or any NBA Jam for home consoles. That was done explicitly by a little company called Acclaim Entertainment, Tyler. You just mentioned Acclaim beforehand. So we could probably do an entire episode or even a series of episodes on Acclaim because their business model is like super interesting in the late 80s, early 90s. But this is essentially it. Greg Fishbach co-founded Acclaim Entertainment in 1987, and Acclaim's entire strategy from the very beginning was to license pre-existing franchises and games rather than creating them internally. So, and Fishbach even says, Acclaim was very successful from the first moment. We did $40 million of business in our first 6 months of operation. Dang. You couldn't beat it in terms of excitement or for the first 10 years or so. So, in the middle of those 10 years, Acclaim signed a deal with Midway, and that deal gave them the rights to home console ports on Midway's arcade games. And they had so many arcade games. Mortal Kombat was one, for example. It's crazy. But that included NBA Jam. And similar to the fee that Midway paid the NBA, $100 for every cabinet sold, Acclaim paid Midway a fee for each game they sold based on the Midway original arcade version of the game. So here's the short version. Acclaim made gangbusters amounts of money, while Midway's arcade versions of NBA Jam was the first arcade to bring like $2 billion in quarters, actually, is what it ended up hitting. Much of that money went to arcade operators and distributors, and Midway didn't see that much money. So Acclaim's business model was so much better. Fishbach even goes into this in the article. He says, quote, I mean, look at the revenue model. So you sell 15,000 arcades at $2,000 a piece, and you sell 2 million units of a game at $400 a piece. Now which one's more successful? I also just realized I goofed the price of the arcade machines. They're $2,000 a piece. I think they said it's $400 to make them.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
I think that was the cost of producing one. I could be wrong on that. But yeah, I'm getting that number confused. So it's $2,000 a piece to sell these arcade machines. But yeah, $40 a piece, but you sell 2 million copies, it's way more money. So Acclaim notably produced the port versions of 1994's NBA Jam Tournament Edition. Like, this is the definitive NBA Jam to me. This is where they kind of tweaked NBA Jam's original functions and made it like what I think it is, because I realized reading the NBA Jam Tournament Edition features, that's the game I owned as a child. So NBA Jam Tournament Edition had updated rosters, new music in the game. Teams consisted of 3 players. Only 2 could be on the court, but you had an extra player that you could pull from in the lineups. There was also a rookies team, which had 5 players on it, and 2 of them played at a time, which I thought was pretty cool. You could substitute that player into the game between quarters. Not quarters the money, quarters the time. So that's clear. The game also featured new hidden teams and secret playable characters. Some of these would be taken out of the game by NBA themselves. So, for example, the NBA took out Elvicious, Grim Reaper, Kong, Raiden, Reptile, and Sub-Zero. That's right. The NBA removed all the Mortal Kombat characters from Tournament Edition. Midway had to go remove these from the test cabinets as well. So they actually had like arcade cabinets they had already put out to test in like certain arcades. And they're like, well, we got to tweak the code to take these characters out of the game. Players were also assigned more attributes. They also had clutch and fatigue levels when you played the game too. Tournament mode was added. This turned off computer assistance and on-court hotspots that allowed for additional points or special slam dunks. So it made it more hard, for those hardcore players. Oh, yeah,
it's like turning items off in Smash Bros.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. In addition to the arcade version of Tournament Edition, there was also SNES, Genesis, 32X, Game Boy, Game Gear, Sega Saturn, PlayStation, and Atari Jaguar. Now, the PlayStation port was actually a North American launch title of NBA Jam. Isn't that cool? It's pretty neat.
Cool.
I think the version of the game I owned was the 1994 Tournament Edition for Genesis, and because I remember being able to switch out players, and you couldn't do that in the original NBA Jam, and that's why I think it was mine. I've deduced it. I did detective work this weekend. I figured it out. I feel
sounds right.
Now, after Acclaim made NBA Jam Tournament Edition for home consoles, there was some tension between Midway and Acclaim. So Sean Liptak, that developer that did Total Carnage I talked about earlier, he said, quote, We were never impressed with Acclaim's work. I think in general, most of the developers at Midway, we just kind of tolerated Acclaim. They just kind of took our stuff and slapped their name on it and hacked up on it and released it. End quote.
Aww.
Ooh, yeah, harsh words from Sean Liptak. Meanwhile, Fishbach, though, the co-founder of Acclaim, claims that Midway and Acclaim were like super close to each other and were like even talking about merging the companies together. He says, quote, Midway and ourselves had a long conversation about putting the two companies together, and then at one point just decided that we couldn't make a deal. So we walked away with it, he says, and we were fine. Everybody was happy. But not everybody really was happy. So after Tournament Edition, Midway was like, you know what? We can do what Acclaim does. Let's get some of that money for ourselves after this. It's our game. You know, we made NBA Jam. We should be able to put it on home consoles. Well, now that was in dispute. Fishbach claimed the idea for NBA Jam came from Acclaim and that the rights were theirs from the very beginning.
What?
Even while Midway was designing the original arcade games. So get this. This is where things get mucky, and I think I figured it out. Two former Midway employees, this is from the article that I read, The Rise, the Fall, and the Return of NBA Jam. So read the section and hear about this if you want to know more. But those two employees that remained anonymous in the article mentioned a guy named Greg Lasson. And he was a former Acclaim employee who then worked for the NBA licensing department in 1994. And they claim that this guy, Greg Lasson, tricked Midway into like saying that letting like Acclaim owns it, even though Midway created it. It's really weird.
Like some
It's
weird legal loophole kind of thing.
Yeah, it's some real he said, she said stuff. I should say allegedly, if I want to protect us from this
course.
company that doesn't exist anymore.
From this 30-year-old lawsuit.
Yeah. But that's what apparently the drama comes from. So there's some sort of weird we said, they said thing going on. Needless to say, Midway loses NBA Jam. Both companies split, and they make their own NBA-themed games after 1996. And both of their games were not considered great. Actually, Midway had to change their 1996 NBA Jam game last minute to NBA Hang Time because of a licensing
I remember
loss.
that game.
Yeah. So Acclaim, meanwhile, kept repping out NBA Jam games up until 2004. And those games were NBA Jam Extreme, that came out in 96. There was NBA Jam 99, which came out in 98. Because remember, all the games were like a year ahead. Very confusing. So NBA Jam 2000, as we mentioned, if you put 2000 on it in 1999, it's cool. That was a game they made. And they actually changed out the announcer in that one, which is a shame. You know, actually, they changed him out in the 96 and 99 versions don't have the original announcer. That original announcer does come back for 2010 version, though.
Oh, good. He's the most important part, if you ask me, as a non-NBA
he
fan.
is NBA Jam. NBA Jam 2001, which was only on Game Boy Color, and then NBA Jam 2002, which was only on Game Boy Advance. So they start going portables only in 2001, 2002. Then came NBA Jam. That's right. No numbers. It's reboot time.
Oh, yeah.
This was Acclaim reaching to return back to their former licensed glory days. Brandon Fish worked at Acclaim Studios, Austin, at the time 2003-2004, when they made NBA Jam, and described it as a, quote, back-to-basics game that would shed the simulation approach with Acclaim had been building from 96 to 2002. So they're like, realize what they did wrong. They're like, we tried to make NBA Jam into an NBA game, and it lost its jamness, its coolness, its on-fireness, its boom shakalaka-ness, okay?
Oh.
So they were going to go back to fast gameplay, Easter eggs, but the graphics would be updated, and there would be a new Legends mode to add like replayability. And then the icing of the cake was the original NBA Jam announcer, Tim Kitzrow, was returning to the game. And boy, oh boy, did that game have mixed reviews on release. NBA Jam 2004 holds a 67 out of 100 on Metacritic. So it's not bad. It just didn't really wow people the way Acclaim wanted it to. And one of the big reasons it didn't wow anyone is it had no online play. This is at the height of online play starting to come into the fold.
You needed an online play at this point.
Yeah, and that's what the game needed more than anything else. Actually, that developer I just mentioned, Brandon Fish, he says, quote, we wanted to get networking in, but it was well beyond the scope of what we could do within our time constraints. It was planned for the next version, if I recall. And tragically, there was no next version. Turmel actually has another theory as to why the 2004 version of the game failed. He says, quote, if you were to play the arcade game, the original coin-op, it certainly had tall dunks and things like that, but it didn't take some of the liberties that they eventually sprinkled into the game, says Turmel. I'm a believer that on games like Jam and Blitz and even Slugfest, because remember those, Midway made those too, like NFL Blitz, Slugfest was the baseball version.
Yeah, they were trying to do the same thing, but like in other sports.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Turmel goes on to say, so that's theirs still. So he says, I'm a believer that on games like NBA Jam and Blitz and even Slugfest, the baseball title, there's still a good basis of reality in the games that the non-hardcore fan, the casual fan, kind of buys into. And once you start doing arenas from Iceland and you're playing on a cruise ship, it really breaks the reality. I don't know if that's true, because I feel like I played NFL Blitz because you could suplex people in between plays. That's the reason I played NFL Blitz.
Yeah, but there was an era and an aura of that this is a real NFL game, right? Like,
yeah, because that's what made it
like
fun.
you were outside of reality. Yeah.
Yeah, you were being bad in a real life NFL game. So apparently you just want just the right amount of realism, and that was what's missing. And it actually was not the boost that Acclaim so desperately needed. And Acclaim filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy in September 2004.
R.I.P.
So now Acclaim is done. But eventually, EA got the rights to NBA Jam from the NBA, because they got the rights after Acclaim went under. And like that's what happens is, I guess, the licensing for NBA was lost when Acclaim filed for bankruptcy. The NBA just took it back, and they didn't give it out again until EA got it. Well, they gave it out to other franchises, but they let EA take it over too. And they set to make a brand new NBA Jam that, while holding true to the original, would have modern features. So the team decided it made sense to keep it 2-on-2 because 4 people would be able to play together in a room without a worry about having AI teammates, which is exactly the reason, actually, that the original NBA Jam game was set up for 4 players, is because 4 people on an arcade cabinet just made sense.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
Funny. They even brought in original series creator Mark Turmel to consult on the game. So he came back into the fold in the rise and fall and return of NBA Jam, which I'm guessing came out right around this time of the 2010 NBA Jam. I think that's when this article comes from. They go into great detail on this. Essentially, Turmel wasn't just brought in as like a marketing ploy, which, I mean, it is. Okay, we brought back the original creator. You're going to tell every single press person in the game sphere that that's a thing. But he actually did have some core ideas the team implemented for the game. And here are some of his ideas. Randomness is a good thing to even out the playing field between hardcore and casual players. So there is an essence of randomness in the programming that you're not going to make 100% of your shots. You're going to miss some stuff. Also, allowing players to block shots when the ball is at 55% of its hump without getting a goaltending call. That's actually something that's purposeful in the game. Like goaltending, once it starts arcing down, like that's goaltending if you block it in that arc down. But they made it 55% because they wanted you to fight and argue with your friends, because then you're more into the game. Also, the game had to run at 60 frames per second. That was something that Turmel was like really into, because that's where like proper responsiveness feels right. You know,
I'm a big proponent of 60 FPS on all games.
Me too. So NBA Jam came out on October 5th, 2010 for Wii, PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and Mac/iOS, because it came out on Mac OS X, I believe, and also on iOS. New modes included a campaign, one-on-one boss battles, elimination, 21, and domination. Just like Call of Duty, it had domination mode. The game stays faithful to the original by using high-resolution photographs for the heads of players, and it actually looks kind of cool if you look at like footage of this game. They did that, though, too, as a cost-saving measure, because this game was actually developed during the recession, like in 2008. And so every game's budget got slashed. So while they did that because it makes sense for NBA Jam, it's also 100% what they needed like to do for cost-saving measures. The original announcer, Tim Kitzrow, returns. He's there as the in-game announcer, the most important piece of the puzzle. The game actually received favorable reviews at launch. The lowest version was the PS3, having a 71 out of 100, but the iOS version of the game had an 85 out of 100.
Wow, it was really fun to play on your phone, I guess.
Yeah, the NBA Jam On Fire edition was released in 2001, and this is a greatly improved version of the game for PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. And this version had improved gameplay mechanics, graphics, and sound. And the Metacritic scores on that went up. So it's 81 for the PS3 and 85 for the 360. So they definitely made some good improvements, I feel like.
That's good.
Most people. Yeah. And that's kind of where we're at with NBA Jam. I didn't say my fun fact. I forgot to write another fun fact in here, but I read this and I loved it. So, Termel is a diehard Pistons fan. And if you watch the Last Dance documentary, which I just did recently, you would know that in the early 90s, the Pistons and the Chicago Bulls hated each other. Like they did not like each other as teams. Funny thing Termel did, if you play as the Chicago Bulls and you're playing the Pistons and you make a clutch shot at the buzzer, you're probably going to miss it because it's programmed to miss it.
Wow.
Because he is a Detroit Pistons fan.
That's in the original arcade cabinets back in the day.
Yeah, that's in the original NBA Jam. Is he put in coding for the Pistons to help them win against the Bulls?
That's so funny.
I love that fact. That fact and the Michael Jordan, Gary Payton getting their own version of the fact made this research super fun. I actually ran out and told my girlfriend these facts, even though she doesn't care really. I was just like, look at this, it's so crazy. But yeah, that's it for NBA Jam for now. I don't know if EA has any future plans. I tried to do some Googling. I couldn't find anything. I just know that I really want to play the 2010 version now. I want to try it out. Like you can actually pick it up. It's backwards compatible on Xbox, so you can play it on your Xbox One. You could also get it on mobile still. They have Android and iOS versions now. And you can still, I guess if you have Mac OS X, you could probably still play it. I don't know how that works compatibility-wise. But maybe
it might still work. It's 10 years old. You know what? It actually probably doesn't with the latest version. But I think that's interesting about that is that there was no Windows version. Like how many games come out that are like real big releases that have a Mac version but not a Windows version?
Yeah, that's true.
It's kind of funny.
Yeah. But yeah, Tyler, what you been playing? That's it for me.
Oh man, this week I really haven't been playing a whole lot. I'm like, I need to take a look around here and I have to look at my shelf of games and just see what I've been playing. Oh, we've been playing. We finished Gears 5, you and me.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And we started up Halo Reach. We're gonna burn through the Halo series. Now we're playing Master Chief Collection on PC. So
great,
repping those out. But other than that, I spent some more time on Mass Effect. I'm really slowly moving through the Mass Effect games. But that's pretty much it, man. I have been spending a lot of time working this week, to be honest.
Oh no! Well, I played Gears and Halo with you. It was so fun. But then also I finally played Faster Than Light. The game, it came out in 2010, where you're in a spaceship. It's like a really difficult spaceship sim game. And I loved it. I had a really good time. I got very far on my third playthrough. I got to the end and then I got obliterated, which was fine because I had so much fun playing. I'm playing on easy. I don't care about setting games on easy now. Yep, I don't care. But it's super fun and I really dig it. And I haven't really played a lot of games like that. And it also feels like it'll play on a toaster. This is the kind of game that everyone should be playing. It's fun.
Oh yeah.
So, but I really enjoyed it. I also been playing a lot of Apex with friends. And that's pretty much it too. I haven't really picked up anything new. Well, Animal Crossing. I've been playing Animal Crossing also. Got to make them bells. You know what I mean?
that's the boilerplate, just Animal Crossing, like how Destiny used to be for us. We haven't played in a couple months.
Yeah, I'm just trying to I'm playing that stock market. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That's all I'm about. But yeah, it's been pretty fun. I'm excited. I'm kind of looking forward to it because June's the month of sales. So I might be picking up some new games to try out during that month. But for now, I'm just kind of trying to play some of my backlog. But we got a new review. Would you like me to read it?
I would love for you to read it, Mike.
Excellent. My phone won't unlock. It doesn't even recognize my face anymore. Oh. This is from KW77. Great nostalgia trip. 5 stars. I've enjoyed catching up on this podcast. It's been quite a nostalgia trip for me. I've been playing games since the early 80s and had forgotten about a lot of the games and systems that you've mentioned in your history of video game series. I also forgot that I had a case and a light for my original Game Boy. Oh, that's cool. That's a sweet accessory. You had to have that. Nice. I feel that was a clutch accessory if you had an original Game Boy.
It really was, yeah.
I really wish I hadn't sold it at a garage sale 15 years ago. Oh, no.
Been there.
Also, the demo discs were another nostalgia point I forgot about. I played so many great PS1 games that way. Metal Gear Solid, Spyro the Dragon, Toomba, and others. Keep up the good work. Thank you, KW77. And I did also play Spyro on those demo discs.
That Tony Hawk demo you just run the warehouse level over and over and over. Man, you could play that forever.
Oh, I haven't tried it yet. I need to try it.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. That's
a great demo.
Listener, that's on the list too. Just so you know, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 are on the list.
Oh yeah. That's got to be, we got to talk about those. The new one's coming out. The remake
soon.
So that's exciting.
I'm so excited. We're going to do emails next week. That's cool with everybody. But, I mean, even if it's not cool with you, I'm sorry, but we're ending the episode now. So I hope it's okay. If you want to get us and tell us how mad you are that we didn't read emails this week, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at mecoletta, MECOLETTA. Tyler's at SneakerElf, ELPH. You can email us at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. We will respond, I promise. We just are bad at reading them right now. So we're going to read them later. That's it. We haven't looked at them yet. Why am I talking this much? Tyler!
Yeah, you want me to take it home? Hey,
yeah, take us home.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.